All right, we seem to have plateaued on numbers, so I think it's probably a good time to kick off. So welcome, this is the Campaignion webinar to talk about some of the new features that we've just released. This is the first time that we're using this new webinar technology, so I hope it'll go smoothly, but if we have any issues, please do forgive us. I'm going to pop on my webcam so you can see me. So within this technology, you should be able to see on your right-hand side of your screen, you should have a couple features. You should be able to raise your hand and you should be able to ask a question. If you could all just click on the raise your hand button so I can see that you're all with me. Almost across the board. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So that's how you raise your hand if you want to get my attention urgently. I will glance to that part of the screen as often as I can. If you could all unraise your hands, it should just be the same button. Lovely. Okay, great. So if you have a question, you can click on the question icon and type a question. Don't do that now because it will add loads of stuff and they're really hard to dismiss. But if you have any questions that you would like me to visit when I take a pause or when we finish a section, please do pop it in the questions area. If you wanted to ask your question verbally rather than typing it, if you simply raise your hand, I will be able to unmute you from my side. I can see that most of you do have microphones on your computer and that they are potentially working. So you would need to unmute yourself as well as me unmuting you. So I'll let you know when I unmute you and you'll have the chance to speak. So first off, I'm just going to unmute my colleagues, Clemence and Jess, so they can introduce themselves. Clemence, hello.
Hello everyone, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yep, perfect. So Clemence is joining us from Vienna. You probably all know Clemence because she works on the support team. Clemence will be available to answer any questions that I cannot answer for you. Thank you, Clemence.
Welcome.
Cool. And next up, we have Jess Day. Hi, Jess.
Hang on, muted myself. Hello there.
Hi. So Jess is joining us from lovely Wales, and if there are any questions that we're unable to answer on this call, Jess will be writing them down and we'll be getting back to you. She'll also be keeping note of what we discuss, that we'll have time points. So for example, if you wanted to listen to the recording later and you wanted a specific point in the recording, she'd be able to find that for you. Cool. It's spooking me a little bit seeing myself, so I'm going to turn my webcam off. You don't need to look at me anyway. So as discussed in the description of the webinar and the promotion that we've done, we're going to cover three main topics today. We're going to look at conditional redirects. We're going to look at opt-in management functionality, some new stuff we've introduced. And we're going to look at WhatsApp sharing, Facebook Messenger sharing, and some cool new things we've done with email sharing. The way I'm going to approach this is I thought it would make sense to discuss them in the context of an action. So we're going to build an action together. I'm just getting a hand raise from Jess. 1 second. I think she's muted herself, so I can't actually do that. Okay, Jess, if you have a question or something to add, could you pop it in the chat dialogue or as a question, and I'll visit that in a moment. Thank you. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to build an action together. When we're building that action, I will skip past a lot of the basic functionality and we'll focus on the new stuff. As this call is just focusing on new functionality, I'm not going to be diving back into existing functionality we've had since, I don't know, earlier in this year or earlier, because there's just so much it could turn into a day-long webinar. So I'm going to focus down on the brand new stuff. But if you do have questions that are broader, we can of course deal with those separately. We can find you the right help articles, etc. But we're going to stay focused on those three topics for now. So before I get cracking, does anyone have any questions or concerns? If you could raise your hand or post a question. I think we're good. Okay, lovely. So I'm going to be using demo installation, as you might expect, to create a new action. So what I'm going to do is just create a petition because it's nice and simple. So none of this is new. Usual stuff. This entire page is all existing functionality, so there's none of the new stuff is on here. So I'm just going to do this really quickly and jump past it. Right, so it's when we get to the form that we get some more of the interesting stuff. So what we've got, I don't know if you would have noticed already, but we've got these two new supported data field types for post opt-in and phone opt-in, and we've also increased the functionality available on the newsletter field. So if we, on this form that we're looking at now, this is the newsletter field that already exists on the form because it's one of the default fields. One of the interesting things about this that we've added is this area here, which is opt-in statement. Can I just check? I am presenting on quite a large screen. If people would like me to make my screen bigger so you can see some more details, if you could raise your hand. I'm not getting any hand raises, so I think I'm okay to proceed. But if you have difficulty seeing any of the detail on my screen, please do just raise your hand and I will increase the size. So when you click on the very first step of setting up your newsletter field, you have this opt-in statement. So this opt-in statement is the location where you record the legal text that the user is agreeing to. So for example, I agree that you may email me about campaigning and fundraising things, that kind of language. So this text you can display anywhere you want, of course, same as always, whether you want to pop that as the description on the field itself, whether you want to use a markup field, etc. But what this area here does is it allows you to save that specific text in one location so you can have a historic view of how people have opted in. Now, we've also created a download center, which we've mentioned to a number of you. This is an area where you can download CSV files, which detail all opt-ins, all opt-outs, and things like this for various periods of time. So you can use that as a historical record for all of the opt-ins. So under GDPR, as I'm sure you guys know, people can request to know why you're emailing them, what permissions they gave, and when. You would be able to use these CSV files to look up a user and say, you opted in using this specific statement on this date, on this action page, etc. So this gives you really important time-shot data. And if, for example, you had a page that exists a really long time, for example, a newsletter sign-up page, if your opt-in language changed, you would simply update the opt-in statement at the bottom, and that wouldn't change historically. So people's records would still reflect the opt-in statement they agreed to. So that's a really nice, really robust feature for you, and I really encourage that people do use it. The other things that we've done, the default state is now off because, of course, you do not want things pre-checked with GDPR. And finally, you have this extra thing at the bottom which says that a no radio is taken as an opt-out. So if you ask people, would you like to join our list? Yes, no. If you decide that no equals unsubscribe, you can make that behavior active here. Now, of course, this only applies where you have an integrated email system. If you don't have an email system integrated, of course, we can't unsubscribe people, so don't sweat that. But if, for example, you have MailChimp.mailer, etc., and you want people to be registering and unsubscribe when they choose no, you simply turn this on. And then you get this extra feature here, which says if the email address is unsubscribed, it will be unsubscribed from all email lists. If you toggle that off, what that does is it means the unsubscribe only affects the list that the user would have subscribed to in this field. So this is old functionality, but just to go back over it, when the user opts in, this is a MailChimp integration on this account, but these are the MailChimp lists that exist on our MailChimp account. So you can see here, if you were to click yes on this opt-in, you would join the Campaignion supporters list, which means if you only want people to leave the Campaignion supporters lists, not all of the lists, you would simply toggle that off. Is that clear? If anybody has any questions. Oh, I can see we've got one come through. Bear with me a second. That question, I might need a little bit of elaboration. I'm just going to unmute you, Nelson, so you can ask your question. Do you have a microphone? I can't hear you, so I'm going to assume that you don't have a working microphone. So the question I had is the opt-in statement visible in the form automatically if it's not empty? So the opt-in statement, good question. So this area here, this is not visible to the user. Sorry, that's very important. This is just for back-end logging of the opt-in. So the description will be, but the opt-in statement is just for you because different clients manage the way they display it to the user in different ways. We wanted to make sure there was a robust option behind the scenes to capture this. So it won't be visible in all occasions. Is that clear? Did that answer your question, Alison? Great. And we've got another one from Ara. So you can download only the opt-ins via CSV because that was not possible before. Yes, that's correct. So this is new functionality. Within the CSVs, there are a number of file options. You have opt-ins, you have opt-outs. You also have all actions taken in that time period, all donations in that time period. These donation centers that we've created are being made available to clients if they want them, but they're not being given out by default. So if you don't already have a download center, where, for example, where you download the opt-ins and you would like one, please just ask support and we'll be able to get that for you. Any more questions before I move on? No? Okay, fantastic. So that's the newsletter field. So now let's explore these post and phone opt fields that we've created. Now, before, people who chose to manage their post opt-in / opt-out and phone opt-in fields on Campaignion used a generic text area and they gave a specific key. But now these are separate fields in the same way that the email newsletter one is, so you've got a little bit more power. So there's a few different options you have with this. You can select the default value. You can change the display in the same way you've always been able to do for the last 6 months or so with newsletter for email. So it can be a checkbox or a radio. Entirely up to you. And then of course you can label those fields however you wish to as well. This is exactly the same as the newsletter field currently works. And again, validation, you can make it required field, etc. So it should all be quite familiar stuff. And the opt-in statement, again, this is in the same location it is with the email newsletter. And you can invert the checkbox so that checked means no change and unchecked means opt-in. Because I know people are handling post a little differently sometimes. And if you change that to radio, you can have radios taken as an opt-out. So currently, the only way to manage an opt-out through one of these one of these post or phone or newsletter fields is to have it as a radio. But we are actually working on allowing a checkbox to work as an opt-out as well, but that doesn't exist just yet. Is there anything I missed on? Nope. Just check I didn't change the thing. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys know this because it's not particularly new. You can change the display of any type of, a newsletter field, post opt, phone opt, etc. Just by toggling it here, checkbox, radios. See another questions come through. 1 second. So Oriana asks, is there a quick way to retrieve a specific supporter's opt-in information? I'm not sure. I'm going to ask Clemence if she has an answer to that. Bear with me a second, Clemence. I'm going to unmute you. Clemence, do you know the answer to that question?
I would say no. There's no quick way for you to read this office for the moment. But it might be interesting if we go to the wizard and check this. Maybe we can see. But I don't think so for the moment.
Okay, so that looks like that's not possible at the moment. However, these CSV files that we're creating for you, it should be sorry, Clemence's audio wasn't fantastic, so just to repeat that there. We don't believe it's possible to quickly look up the opt-in details for a specific user within Campaignion. However, the CSV files that are produced for you, we would encourage that you import and manage those in your CRM so that you have that data stored in one central location. You can, of course, look at the user record in Campaignion, and that will say what their status is, but you won't necessarily have the opt-in statement in that record at the moment. If there's enough, as with all things, if there's enough demand for it, we can look at putting it on the roadmap, but that's not currently possible. I've got another question. Can you test what works better, radio or checkbox? That's a good question. The implementation of that is definitely possible, but I'm not going to cover it right now because it's we're getting a little bit too complex too quickly. So if I haven't answered that question by the end of the webinar, and I probably won't, Ira, we can deal with that separately because it's definitely possible. But I won't go into the details. I hope that's okay at the moment. Cool. And then finally, we've got phone opt, which works exactly the same as the post opt. So you can invert. Oops, sorry, I've clicked on the wrong one. You can invert, you can add an opt-in statement, you can change it from checkbox to radio, etc. So yeah, those are relatively straightforward. The other cool thing that we are doing, if you bear with me 1 second, I need to open a page. Oriana, do you mind if I show people a demo page on your installation, because you've got a shiny bit of functionality that other people don't have yet? Excellent, thank you. So bear with me a second, guys. So this piece of functionality is so new that it doesn't even exist on the demo account yet. So I'm just going to load up a page on Global Justice now on their staging site. Lovely, okay. So 2 seconds. Right, so this is a page from the staging site of Global Justice Now. They're about to do the beta testing for a cool new bit of functionality. So what that is a piece of functionality that allows you to set it so that when a user gives their telephone number, that is them opting in. So there'll be a statement on the page itself that says, if you give us your phone number, we may call or text you about our campaigns and other ways you can help. So there's obviously no point in collecting a phone number unless you can call it. So this bundles those two things in a legal way, because the only purpose in giving the phone number is to be called. So it's not a bad bundling as GDPR would see it. So what you can do is you put in the description which says, if you're giving us your number, you're opting in. And then you toggle this on here, which says giving a phone number implies a phone opt-in. So once you've clicked that, you get another one of these opt-in statement areas. So you can pop in the formal legal statement that you're using when collecting the opt-in into this area, and that data will be safe and available in the CSVs along with other types of opt-ins. Cool, so let me just check my list to make sure I've not missed anything, and then I'll take another moment for questions. Cool, I think that's it. So that's all of the new opt-in field types and the new functionality on the existing fields. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? Okay, I'm just going to check for hand raises. No raised hands, fantastic. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to put in a just a little question, which it will be clear why in a moment. So I'm just popping in a checkbox here. Cool, okay, so let's move on. Nothing has changed in the email section, so I'm just going to leave those as is and move on. Right now, here's one of the cool bits of functionality with the conditional thank you pages. So as per usual, you have the option when you reach the thank you page of either building a new thank you page below, and all users will just see that thank you page. But now when you select the top option to redirect to a URL, you've got this extra button here, which says add personalized redirect. So what you can do there is you can set up redirects to different thank you pages based on a few different criteria. So the criteria we have at the moment are opt-in status and submission field. Opt-in status refers not just to this specific form, but that actually looks at the user's user record. So for example, if I opted in to hear from you in a previous form, and then I didn't see an opt-in on this form because it had been hidden or whatever, my opt-in status is still opted in, but I didn't do it on this form. Or if I did opt in on this form, wherever you've opted in, this reflects your existing like master opt-in status. So that's really cool because it refers to the user record, not just this form. And the other thing you have a submission field. So any fields that we have on the form that we just created, they're available as criteria as well. So there's 2 examples for how you can use these. I think one of the most popular ones is going to be to boost opt-in rates. So if, for example, somebody takes this action, and in taking this action, they say that they choose no, they don't join your list, or they choose no and they unsubscribe, depending on how you've set it up, you might want to give them a different thank you page. One that says, we've acknowledged your unsubscribe, we have removed you from our list, we're so sad to see you go. If you change your mind, here's a big old button to opt back in. Or if they haven't opted in, they've not unsubscribed, they just haven't opted in, you might say, we're sorry thank you much for taking this action, we're sorry we can't be in touch in the future. If you would like to be a part of our ongoing campaigns, again, please click this button. So, for example, if you want to target people who are not opted in, opt-in has not opted in. It's that simple. And then what you can do is you can select the node that you want people to go to if they're not opted in. I'm going to step back from this for a second because there's another connected piece of functionality that we should look at first before going back to these. So when you're setting up multiple thank you pages, because different users are seeing different pages, you need to create the pages that they go to first. So if you're going to be sending people to a page that allows them to opt in, you need to create a page where they can do that. So let's step back and let's look at a new type of page we've created. So because you need to do these redirects, we've separated out the ability to make a share page as a distinct action. Sorry, not share, sorry, a thank you page as a distinct action. And again, demo 1 doesn't, share pages. So share page is a thank you page. So if you were creating a single page for everybody, you would create this as a part of the main action. But if you want to create multiple thank you pages, you need to do them separately. So if we just create a share page here. So this will appear exactly the same as if you had created it on the last step of a normal action setup. Is that clear for everybody? Because I know that's a bit of a change from what we've done before. Just going to check for questions. I think we're okay. Raise your hand if you'd like to discuss anything here at this point. No, all good, fantastic. Okay, so let's create a share page. So as per usual, towards the bottom, you have a share block area. And when you click on that, you can see the URL to be shared, the title of the share box. Now, of course, because this is a detached thank you page, I would play it safe and I'd pop in the URL to be shared, like the full thing. For example, what was our node ID? 304. Great. So the page I want people to share is demo1/node/304. So that's all usual. That shouldn't be unfamiliar to anybody. The thing that gets a little bit jazzier is when you click advanced share options, we've now got a few more tools at our fingertips. So if we start at the top, the email share button has existed for a very, very long time, and that still exists, that still works as is. The way that works, as I'm sure you guys know if you've ever used it, when a user clicks on share by email, they open up a new web page which has a template share email, they put in their friend's email address, etc. The reason it's set up like that is because mail to links, so when somebody clicks on it, it opens their their mail sender, they can be really tricky and really annoying sometimes on a desktop because not everybody has one email system configured. So I'm sure some of you will have experienced the pain before, clicking on an email link and your computer trying to open up like a software program you didn't even know you had, and then trying to install Outlook for it, and half an hour later you were just wishing you'd never clicked on that button. So the reason we've not used mail-to links as our default for email sharing is because of that. We wanted a smoother user experience. However, the benefit of mobile devices is that it's possible to detect whether an email system is used on that device. So if you use an Android or an iPhone or whatever phone you use, we can see, have you got like Gmail set up, if you've got a whatever set up. So what we can do is we can use a mail-to link for users who are on mobile and you have a client configured, and it actually means their process is quite smooth. Does that make sense for everybody? Raise a hand if not. Okay, so what we can do is we can turn this on, and I'll show how it works in a moment. But this is all pretty straightforward. The subject line of the email, the body of the email. I just took this action. Can you? So obviously it's take a minute to make that better than what I've just typed. So that's now available when we can detect that the user has a mail-to client configured. It will use a mail-to link. And when it doesn't, the email share button will still work as is. What we've got next, Facebook share button, that's old. Twitter share button, also old. And these shouldn't be new or surprising to anybody. But what is new is WhatsApp share button. So this button will only be visible for users using a mobile phone, because the web experience for WhatsApp isn't particularly elegant at the moment. We don't want to punish supporters by encouraging them to use WhatsApp on a desktop. So you can put in your WhatsApp message here. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a moment. And then Facebook Messenger share button kind of does what it says in the tin. Again, that's hidden for non-mobile users. So you can see here we've got all of these options, but if we save the page, you can only see these three, right? So I can't webcast from my phone, so instead I've already done these screen grabs for you. So this is what that thank you page would look like if I was viewing it from a mobile phone. So you can see 3 buttons, 5 buttons. So these two at the bottom are only visible for mobile users. Now if you're clicking on the email one at the top, so I do have an email system configured on my phone. I have Gmail. So when I click on email, it opens this up. Excuse the German for non-German speakers, my phone's in German, but hopefully it's still quite clear. So you'll just have this message pop up, and you'll just need to put in the to line, and then you hit send. You can obviously change the message as much as you want, but that popped up in like literally seconds for me because I have that configured. If I didn't, I'd get the usual form. If you use WhatsApp sharing, I've greyed out the bit at the top because it's not relevant to what I'm showing you, so don't be confused by the grey. But I just wanted to show you that when you share a link through WhatsApp, you get this little preview, a bit like you do with Facebook, but smaller. So that will take the page title and the preview text exactly the same that Facebook does. So you can configure that. You can write the message, you can send it to as many people as you want, you can send it to groups, you can do whatever you want in WhatsApp. And finally, Facebook, again, you can write a message at the top if you want to, but entirely optional. And then you can just click on send. You can send it to individuals, you can send it to groups, and it will send that link out to them. Do the new share options make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions? Again, if you just raise your hands or pop a question in the question area. Oh, yeah, 1 second. Connell? Connell, yes. Did you have a question?
Yes, those options are not currently available on my version of it.
Yes, so they are so beta that they're not rolled out to 99% of installations yet. We're going to be doing that really, really soon though. So the functionality is available for just a couple clients who are doing the beta testing for us. We're just making sure there aren't any bugs, that everything's running smoothly. As soon as we're happy with that, we'll do the rollout so everybody can use it who would like to.
Okay, super, thank you.
Yeah.
No trouble. Yes, sorry, I should have mentioned that as well. Some clients have this already, some do not. We're just doing final tests and stabilization before we roll it out across the board. Any more questions or hand raises? Yes, we've got another few questions here. So Joe says, can you get all of the share options by doing a thank you page at the end of an e-action? Yes, you absolutely can. So let's revisit our petition. So if I were to create this as just a normal page, you go to the share block, and they're all there exactly the same. So yes, you can. Good question. Nelson says it would be neat to be able to change the order of the buttons. Yes, it would. We do not have that yet, I'm afraid, Nelson, but thank you for the feedback. Jess, if you could scribble that down, that would be very helpful, and we can revisit and discuss that. Thank you. Any more questions or hand raises? I think we're okay for now. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make another type of landing page. I'm going to make a page that I'm going to use for users to encourage them to opt in. So if they take an action, they choose no, I want to give them one last nudge while they're on my website. So I'm going to create a page that's just about getting them to opt in. Now I can use a petition or a flexible form here. They basically function the same, so it doesn't really matter. So we'll just use this one. And again, this is all quite familiar stuff. When you're setting up the form for this, have a think about what you think would be like the smoothest, nicest supporter experience here. So I would suggest if somebody's just taken an action for you, and they've given you their details, you don't want to be collecting those details again. Of course, web form pre-fill means that the fields that they've already completed will be pre-populated, but I like to keep the forms super minimal. So in order to do this, I would honestly just have email visible. And it's up to you how you want to manage this, but given that the purpose of this form, the sole purpose, is to opt in, I would argue, and again, please do always seek legal advice on your opt-in solutions, I would argue you don't need to have the opt-in field visible because the whole purpose in the form is to opt in. So here are a few examples of how different clients have interpreted and displayed this same idea. So this is a page from Freedom from Torture. And what they've done is this is at the end of one of their actions. Thank you for taking action. You said you don't want to receive email, but if you change your mind, simply take action, just click yes below. The email address field will automatically fill itself in because you'll be coming from a previous action. But then you can select yes or no and continue. Whereas Independent Age, for example, have decided because this form is just about opting in, you don't need to show the yes no again because yes is just the big old button. So what they've done instead is they've simply got a form that says, we're sorry to see you've decided not to be emailed by us. Here are some reasons why you might want to keep being emailed by us. And then you just click this giant red button if you want to opt back in. And if you don't, you can click no. So there's loads of different ways you can display these pages, but they can be really valuable. Even if you're just doing a really simple display of it, you're using existing templates, you're just having a couple sentences of text and an email address field, I'd recommend doing that. The reason I'm keeping the email address field, even though it will be populated from the previous action, is because it's possible for a user to have specific plugins or specific configuration on their computer, which means that the pre-population from one form to another is blocked. So this will be a very, very minority of people. I'd estimate maybe 1, possibly 2% of people. However, you don't want to lose those 1 or 2% of people. So I tend to keep the email address field visible. It will populate automatically for most people. Where it doesn't, they can pop it in and the form will still work for them. So if you're not using these forms, I'd recommend setting one up. I think it's really nice if the form references the action the user's just taken. Maybe has the same picture, similar styling, so it feels like a continuation of the action rather than a brand new action. But do give that a go if you're not doing it, and I'll show you how we can use those in a moment. just bear with me a second. I'm just going to finish creating this page. So I don't want first name because I've already got it. Last name. And I'm going to set the, because this is an opt-in field, I'm going to do something that is normally a massive no-no, and I'm going to set the default state to opted in because it's the whole form is to opt in, and I'm going to hide it. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it visible. Sorry, that's a bit more complicated than I wanted to go into right now. And we'll get rid of this warning text because let's not worry about that for now. So this is node 306. So now this is a form that just, let's turn off that counter, that looks silly. There we go. Obviously your form would be a little bit more attractive than this because I haven't got a picture or anything, but you can see the point. It's a very simple form. It just encourages people to take the action. I'm just going to rename, make this a little bit clearer for the user. So I've just added some intro text, and I'm going to change the label on the button. There we go. So now the button says, I want to receive your emails. That's nice and clear. So I'm just going to jot down the node ID. So it's please join us in 306. And the share page that I made is called please share, and it's 305. That's nice and simple. So we'll see why that's important now. So we're going back now. We're in the original petition. So this is the petition about trains and train fares. So we'll go back in. So as you remember, we got as far as the thank you page set up, and then we jumped out and we made a share page and we made an opt-in page. So let's set one of these up. So I'm going to use my first redirect for people who are not opted in. So the opt-in has not opted in. Now I can either search for all of the nodes that exist. I can do it either by the title of the node or by the node ID. So I know that this one is called please join us, and it's node 306. You can see that there. So now if the user has not opted in, they will go to this node. The redirect label, as it says in the brackets, is only seen by you. So use this to be really clear and really specific about what this redirect is doing, so that when you come back to it later, if one of your colleagues comes back to it later, it's still nice and clear for you. So now if the user isn't opted in, once they've completed this form, they'll go to an opt-in page, and we set up the default page to be the share page. Now what I'd want to do, if people are going to this opt-in page here, so 306, I want to make sure that when they complete that action, they get the chance to share as well. So I'm going to set up the thank you page for 306 to be 305. Does that make sense for everybody? Raise your hand if that's a bit confusing. No, I think we're all good. Oh, I've got a hand raised. 1 second, Connell. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, can you just go over that again? I didn't quite follow it. The 305 to 306 bits.
Sorry, you're cracking up a little bit. Could you repeat that?
Could you go over the 305 to 306 bit again?
Do you mind typing your question, because it's cracking up when I'm trying to hear you? Thank you. Sorry about that. Just going to wait a moment for that question to come through. Could you go over the 305? Yes, okay, good point. So, right, what we have is we've created 2 more pages together just now. So we have node 305, which is the share page, and we have node 306, which is the please opt-in page. So if the user takes our first action, so if they take this petition, and at the end of having taken this petition, they haven't opted in, we want them to land on this please join us page as their thank you page, so they get another chance to opt in. Because the most important thing is that we can continue communicating with this person, right? But if they're already opted in, we want to send them straight to the share page, which is node 305. So, and then if the user opts in, so they say they go to the opt-in page and they fill in their email address and they hit submit, it would be great if they would then land on the share page, so they don't miss the chance to share. It's just delayed by one ask. Does that make sense? So what I would do is I'd go into the please opt-in page. And I would set up the thank you to be the share page. Is that clear at all for you, Connell? Fantastic. Okay. So now what we've got by way of thank you page in our original petition action, if the user has not opted in, they will go to node 306, which is the please join us page. If, however, they don't meet this criteria, they get the default page, which is the share ask, just 305, just like this. Or if you're on a mobile, it has a few more options. So that's one of the most basic, most useful, I'd say, ways of using the conditional thank you pages. But there are a few other ways we can do this. So let's explore. I'm going to get rid of this one for now. So let's say, oh, I've got a question for Oriana, sorry one second. Are you planning on making it possible to have different page titles in the back end? This would make it easier to find the right pages straight away rather than remembering the node. So the page title is always going to be visible to the user. So it can be anything you want it to be. But of course, it still needs to make sense to the user. So I think naturally, you're probably going to have a lot of pages, for example, that say, please share, or thank you, etc. Which is why we've made it possible to search by the node or the title, because it might be that you have multiple pages with the same title, so you can differentiate them with the node ID. But the title is visible to the user, which is why you wouldn't necessarily call it something funky. For example, share please June 2018, because the user would see that. So Oriana, that's why you would have to use nodes if you're using the same page titles. But I hope that's okay. I tend to, when I'm running campaigns, keep a list of all my nodes separately, which can sometimes make things a little bit quicker. But we feel like it would add some confusion and complication to add another title field that was just for the back end, which is why we haven't done that. So I hope that's all right. So to explore another way we can use the personalized redirects. So you notice I put in a weird form field earlier on. I asked if people commuted. So for example, if you were running different actions, so say you're running an action against a particular company, and when people took that action, you might ask them, are you a shareholder for this company, or are you a customer for this company? Now, if people just say that they're a shareholder, maybe you want them to do a different action than if they're a customer. Maybe if they're neither, maybe there's not a follow-on action. So you can use that to target your supporters more specifically. So in this example, I asked, do you commute by train? So if people commute by train, maybe they've got stories that they could share to, maybe there's consultation happening on a new law and they only want input from people who use the railway regularly. Maybe I'd redirect people to a stage of a consultation here. So people commute by train. I would add the filter submission field. Do you commute by train? I can't remember the value. Maybe this is a bad example. 1 second. Clemence, I'm going to pull you in here. Have I done something silly? 1 second. Unmuted. Clemence, hello.
Hey.
So does this not work with the checkbox at the moment? Is that the catch?
I think it should work. I tried something like this. But you might have to know the value of the checkbox for the moment.
Yes, good point. Okay, so let's just leave that like this for the example. We will clarify that situation for checkboxes. I think what we're planning to do is to make that be a selectable drop down here, but this is the first iteration of this. We don't have it yet, but you could use any of these. Just an example is how you can use these fields. So maybe you'd want to send them to a, to a different action if they commuted, and if they don't, then they'll get this default. So to reiterate that, you can use any of the fields on your existing form, and you can also use them as ands, so you can have multiple criteria for one redirect. So you can have submission fields in the existing form and the opt-in status of the user. Those are the two things you can use to query that. I'm just going to go back to my notes and check that I've not missed anything here. I think that's it. Does conditional fields make sense to people? I can see we've got some, just check for questions. Get back to Connell 1 second. Connell, I'm assuming your hand is freshly raised. Did you have another question?
I haven't looked at it. There's no point.
It's probably a wee bit too far along, but will I be able to read forms? So if somebody enters a particular location, then we'll be able to give them a different follow-on page. Sure. So if they put in a particular postcode or something like that.
So what we don't have geo mapping on this. But what you would be able to do, for example, so am I right in thinking you're Friends of the Earth Scotland?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you, for example, had like a country drop down on your form in which you had England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, etc., you could then have whatever the selection was there, redirect them to a different thank you page. So you can do that through specific selections, but at the moment you cannot do that by geo mapping.
Okay, you'd have to make it a kind of yes/no thing.
Yeah, you'd have to say, for example, are you based in Scotland? Or you'd have to have them search from a country drop down and choose Scotland, for example, yeah.
But you couldn't do it postcode begins with G after they enter the postcode.
You could actually do that, yeah.
Okay, well that's good.
You can work that out from the postcode item, then yeah, absolutely, go for it. I think begins with, let me just double check that begins with is an option, so. Is not contains, does not contain matches. So begins with is a little bit trickier there. So it's not on specific options, but maybe there's a contains or there's a matches that would work for you. I'm not sure. If you have a specific need on this, let's pick that up. See if we can find a solution for you.
Very helpful.
Cool, I'm going to put you back on mute. Clement, hello.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Connell. You can use the matches option to filter for regular expression of your checkbox or radio, for example. So if first name matches and then anyway, support can help you anyway, or you can enter a regular expression. That's what I wanted to say.
Cool. So for those of you who can't hear Clement properly, she's just saying you can use regular expressions there. And Connell, please do get in touch with support if you'd like some help doing something specific. Okay, anyone have any further questions or issues at this point? Feel free to type or raise your hand. So we've got a question from Joe. Can you redirect people to external URLs, e.g. your own website? Absolutely you can, yes. So you can paste an entire URL in the destination. It's just we've got this quick functionality if you happen to be using a Campaignion form, but if you're using one of your own URLs, just pop the whole URL in there. You can also pop it in the default area here. Yeah, that's absolutely no problem. You can use Campaignion URLs, you can use any URL you can think of. Any other questions? Oh, we've got a hand raised. 1 second, Daniela. Daniela, hello.
Hello. I was just maybe wondering about one step back on the emails tab of the petition. Because right now, my understanding is that we have to have a double opt-in, right? For all the petitions from now on to be in compliance with the GDPR. And I was just wondering if we are maybe thinking about creating this sort of like redirects for opt-in as well. Like, for example, if a user subscribes to a petition and he has not opt-in, then he doesn't need to confirm his email, and then he will go to the thank you page where we kind of ask them again to subscribe and stuff like that. Or yeah, what would you best advise us to do for the double opt-ins? Because right now you can either have all of them in double opt-in or not, right? So sure. Yeah, I was just wondering if you can have a best practice to share with us.
So the double opt-in for GDPR compliance, that's an interpretational issue. I know a lot of our clients aren't having a double opt-in for all brand new users. That's very much a decision made at organizational level. If you're correct in saying that we do not have a conditional redirect thing for emails based on the opt-in status. One thing that I would suggest is worth checking out is that you could, if you wanted to target just brand new people with a double opt-in, it might be possible to handle that on the side of your email tools. So I don't know which email tools you use, but there might be, for example, a welcome double opt-in email that system can automatically trigger, because that can differentiate between brand new opted-in people and existing people. So it might be possible to handle that on the other side of things. But at the moment, no, it is not possible to do a conditional double opt-in email for that, unfortunately. But Jess, again, if you could scribble that down as something somebody's asked for, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Just checking questions again. So Oriana asks, can we use dynamic content on thank you pages, e.g. changing the text based on the actions people have just taken? That's a very good question, because that would obviously mean you don't have to have too many thank you pages to be able to reference the previous submission. I know there is some functionality on some installations that allows you to put the value from one of the fields from the previous action onto that action. For example, hi, Claire, thanks so much for signing the petition. But we don't currently have any functionality in place that pulls anything other than the value keys from the previous form. So you couldn't say, hi Claire, thanks for taking the action about train fares. That's currently not functionality that we have, although I definitely see why that would be valuable to avoid having to have multiple pages for thank yous. I'm guessing you're picturing, Ariana, that you would have one, say, opt-in page that you'd use for all of them. As a follow-up, not even a hidden field, you can put a hidden field on your forms, which has some kind of description. You might then be able to use that as a web form token. I'm going to unmute Clemence so she can weigh in on this one. Clemence?
Yes, sorry, I didn't get the question.
Sure. So the question is, you know how with some installations, for example, Care International, we're able to use web form keys on thank you pages. So it will say, hi Claire, thank you for donating £3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it possible at all to use a hidden field value as one of those values? So it says, hi, thanks for taking the trains action, and trains action comes from a hidden field value. Is that possible?
As far as I know, the tokens don't work well with conditional redirects for the moment. This is an issue that we've got already feedback. I'm not sure. I probably will investigate this further. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just to repeat that for those of you who had sound issues, Clemence said that at the moment the web form tokens, so the personalization of thank you pages, aren't working well with the conditional redirects. But we are aware of this and we are looking at solutions, and we'll be able to get back to you with some specific ideas. Jess, if you could write down that Oriana would like some information on this in the future, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Daniela has asked marketing clouds. Daniela, I'm not sure what you mean by this. Are you able to elaborate on the question, or would you like me to unmute you? So you're self-muted at the moment, so if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to unmute and ask. Otherwise, does anyone have any other questions? Just checking for raised hands. Seems to be good. Okay, here we are. So Daniela, is the email system that you are using, you mentioned that you didn't know which were the system.
Yeah, when
Daniela,
I asked my question, essentially you said, yeah, I don't know which email system you're using, so I just wrote Marketing Cloud there, and yeah,
okay.
sorry, but yeah.
Gotcha. I see. So there's an answer. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. So maybe there might be a double opt-in that you can use on that side that will be able to distinguish for you. I hope that's helpful. Okay, I'm just gonna one last call for questions. Of course, this isn't the last chance. Support will always be there for you, and we have a recording of this webinar if you need to go back and visit anything again. So thank you all very much for your attention and your participation. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any feedback that you'd like to share, please do just drop me or anyone from the team an email. But otherwise, thank you very much. I'm going to just unmute Clemence and Jess in case they have anything that they would like to add.
No.
Okay, Jess?
So just thank you, and I've got notes of all the questions and a rough schedule of timings of what we've been covered. So if you want to share the recording with any colleagues, hopefully we'll be able to help you point them to the particular parts of the recording that they might want to cover.
Wonderful, thank you, Jess. Cool. So that's it from me, just turning my webcam off to say bye. It was lovely to have you all on the call, and hopefully this was helpful. And if you like the format, then it's something we will explore continuing with. So have a nice rest of the day and take care, everyone. Bye.